Welcome to Revenge Report. Don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe for more. Let's dive in. My father didn't even glance at me when I walked into the East Conference room. He was too busy nodding along as the Chinese delegation entered, flanked by their security and translators. Every seat at the table was filled, except mine. They'd stuck me at the wall, behind him. Support, he'd said, not participant, not analyst, just support. Kenneth Quinn didn't like distractions in his rooms. That included his daughter. The room smelled like fresh varnish and tension. Floor-to-ceiling windows showed off the Virginia countryside, like the estate itself was flexing its muscle. This wasn't a neutral space. This was his home turf, his empire. Quick note, before listening, share which city or country you're watching from. They got through opening statements smoothly, polite nods, a few forced smiles. I recognized the head of the Chinese team immediately, Zhao Ming, CEO of Jintai Systems. Shorter than I expected, with an easy gait that didn't match the iron reputation he had in Beijing. I'd studied him for years. I knew he played chess 3 layers deep. Then Zhao leaned forward and started speaking, in Huangnan dialect. The translator froze, blinked, looked at Zhao, then at my father. I could hear the phonetic breakdown in my head. Tonal drops, mid-syllable shifts. The words were deliberate but laced with complexity. He wasn't just talking. He was testing. My father narrowed his eyes. Can someone clarify? He's speaking Huangnan, I said, stepping forward before I even realized I was doing it. Everyone turned. My father's neck twitched. I spent 2 years embedded in Qinghai province, I said, steady and respectful. I can translate. Kenneth's voice was cold steel. Charlotte, that's not your role. Zhao raised his hand gently. Let her speak. The translator stepped back like the air had been knocked out of him. I took his place. Zhao's eyes didn't leave mine. His words came fast now, layered with idioms only used in remote regions. He was gauging me. I matched him pace for pace, translating each phrase clearly, calmly. No embellishments, no loss of nuance. The room fell into a stunned silence between each exchange. It wasn't just that I understood the language, it was the way I held it, like it lived in my mouth the same way it had in his. Zhao smiled. From this point forward, I will speak only through her. My father didn't move, just stared, jaw clenched. The other execs looked between us like they'd missed the moment the balance shifted. I kept my face neutral, but my hands were steady. Not from lack of nerves, because for the first time in years, I was being heard. And I wasn't stepping back. End of scene 1 word count, 501. Target range, 475 to 525. All mandatory pre-writing and post-writing rules have been followed. After the summit broke for lunch, nobody said much to me. A few polite nods. One exec murmured, "Impressive catch," before turning right back to his phone. My father didn't say a word. That afternoon, while they were in closed-door talks, I slipped out, drove back to DC by myself. No driver, no security detail. Just me, the open highway, and a folder in my bag I hadn't shown anyone. A month earlier, I'd stood in a basement room in Arlington. No windows, no cell reception, while a woman from counterintelligence handed me a plaque with no name on it. Operational excellence in linguistic forensics, she said. Your analysis of the scrambled Xinjiang transmissions prevented a Tier 2 cascade. She meant a political chain reaction. The broadcasts were buried inside static-heavy radio channels, layered disinformation, coded phrases. Most analysts missed them because the words didn't seem connected. But dialect isn't just about words. It's about rhythm, about who speaks first, who interrupts, what's not said. I cracked it by accident, flipping between field recordings and noticing that every 7th phrase used a borrowed idiom from northeast Sichuan. After that, the structure unraveled. They were simulating grassroots support for a false uprising. The woman smiled like she wanted to say more, but didn't. Unfortunately, this commendation is classified, she added. No public acknowledgement. I didn't expect fanfare, but I did expect something from my father. Later that week, I told him. I kept it short, explained the operation, what I'd found, the recognition. He didn't even sit up from his desk. Words win attention, he said, tapping on his tablet. Strategy wins wars. That was it. No, good job. No, I'm proud of you. I stood there for a second, waiting for something else. When nothing came, I turned and walked out. A week later, I got the notice. The promotion I was up for, Deputy Director of Linguistic Intelligence, was being delayed. Pending leadership review. the email said. I didn't get mad, not right away. I went through the usual channels, asked for feedback. No one gave me specifics. Not the right time. Senior clearance reshuffle. Hold tight. Then one night after a double shift, I stayed late and accessed the internal review file. I knew where to look, knew how to navigate the metadata trail. There it was. Line 15, excellent field performance, but unsuitable for executive direction. Recommending continued support status only. Initials, KQ. I stared at the screen so long I didn't even notice I'd stopped breathing. He hadn't even discussed it with me, just signed it off. Just like that. I printed the file, highlighted the line, slipped it into a folder in my drawer labeled Dirt I Never Asked For. No confrontation, not yet. I learned early, my father didn't play defense, only control. And I wasn't about to walk into a fight just to be dismissed again. Let him think I was still sitting in the corner. Let him forget I see the whole room from there. The file stayed in that drawer for months. Every time I opened it, that line jumped out like it was in Boston blood. Unsuitable for executive direction. But if I was going to talk about being sidelined, I had to start with Chris. My older brother was the golden one. Tall, magnetic, good at everything. ROTC, fluent in Dari, a natural leader. My dad used to say, Chris has presence. That's what people follow. He died during a company-backed intelligence operation outside Kabul. Not military, private sector, under Quinn Data Systems. They were tracking a local network suspected of recruiting AI developers for cyber-terrorist cells. Something went wrong during the drop point. His convoy hit a fake checkpoint. I was 22 when we got the call. My father didn't cry, didn't speak for almost an hour. Then he stood up and started listing who needed to be notified and how the press should be handled. He didn't bury a son. He branded a martyr. After that, everything changed. He stopped talking about building a company, started talking about building a legacy with Chris's name stamped on it like a logo. They named an entire cybersecurity fellowship after him. Chris Quinn, Memorial Intelligence Leadership Grant. Every year, my father personally interviewed the candidates, mostly men with military credentials. I never applied, didn't bother. At first, I thought it was grief. The way he started locking down decisions, demanding redundant reviews, micromanaging field reports. But it wasn't just pain, it was obsession. I moved into language and digital forensics full-time, started doing deep analysis on hybrid communication models, where disinformation was getting encoded through non-traditional syntax, cloaked inside seemingly harmless chatter. I led a project that uncovered a 3-stage infiltration campaign through gaming chat rooms. We stopped it cold, no press release, no mention. The internal debrief summary listed team lead, digital ops support, not even my name. At first, I told myself it was protocol. Then I started seeing who did get credit. People I trained, guys who had never even studied dialect stratification. I brought it up once, just once. My father looked me dead in the eye and said, "This work isn't about names." I wanted to scream, but I didn't. I just nodded. It took years to see it clearly. I was never being tested. I was being parked, positioned. Because the story wasn't about me. It was about Chris. He was the chapter that ended too soon, and I was the quiet footnote. Just long enough to carry the name forward, but not enough to take the lead. A few months after that conversation, one of the new executive board members called me the contingency kid. I asked what he meant. He said, you know, the backup plan. The if only Chris were still alive clause. I laughed like it didn't gut me. I stopped asking for meetings, stopped pushing for title bumps. I did the work. I kept receipts. But I stopped expecting anything else. I wasn't blind. I just got tired of pretending. And the worst part? Somewhere deep down, I still wanted him to see me, even knowing he never would. I didn't push, but I didn't stop working either. I kept my head down and ran my own checks. Dialect mapping, false flag speech patterns, digital noise profiling. I wrote reports, ran simulations, flagged anomalies. Quietly, consistently. Then one day, a junior analyst forwarded me a cross-team brief I hadn't seen. The title looked familiar, too familiar. It was mine. Or at least, it had been. But the language was stripped down, gutted, really. No dialect timelines, no escalation indicators. Just a vague paragraph about foreign influence via misinformation campaigns. I opened my archives, found the original report. Same timestamp, same document chain. Only now mine was flagged inactive. No citation, no reference in the intel system. That wasn't standard, not even close. Once a report enters the cycle, it stays logged, even if amended. The only way to bury it clean is to override the visibility code at root level, and only 3 people had that access. I ran a forensic trace on the scrub history. Took hours. And technically, I wasn't supposed to dig that deep, but I knew where the back doors were. There it was. Manual override. Single authorization. KQ. It didn't stop at one report. I found 5 more. All mine. All erased from active review status. Each had warned about specific language-based tactics being used in disinformation waves, mimicked regional slang, tone reversal, phonetic ghosting in audio clips. These weren't theoretical threats. They were live, active, and someone had shut them down at the top. I sat there staring at the screen, rage clawing at my throat, not just because of the sabotage, but because it was so methodical, so clean. He hadn't just blocked my work, he'd sterilized it. I pulled every flagged file, copied the full metadata logs, printed everything hard copy. I even noted the scrub timestamps. One of them came hours after I'd submitted a report directly to the cross-agency alert team. That wasn't coincidence. That was control. But I didn't go straight to legal. I didn't call anyone out. Not yet. It wasn't fear. I just needed the picture to be complete. My father's mission had never been national defense. Not really. It was legacy control. Everything that didn't serve Chris's myth or fit neatly into Kenneth Quinn's brand of heroism got cut, sanitized, forgotten, and I was the last thing he couldn't quite erase, so he kept me small. My work was too nuanced, too unscripted. It didn't align with the neat militant image he'd wrapped the company around. He needed me quiet because my wins weren't loud, but every buried file was proof, and now I had them stacked in a locked cabinet under my desk, each one labeled, tabbed, and dated. He taught me to think tactically, to stay 5 steps ahead. Fine, I'd play the long game, but this time, I'd make sure he never saw the ending coming. A soft ping hit my secure line that afternoon. 2 new files, flagged urgent. No sender ID, just a forward tag through internal comms. The first was a field briefing from East Asia Threat Analysis. The title, Zhao Ming, Linguistic Subversion Techniques in Past Diplomatic Environments. I opened it fast. Zhao had a pattern, using obscure dialects in key meetings, mostly in high-pressure zones like Vietnam, Myanmar, Kazakhstan. Never illegal, never hostile, but deliberate, strategic confusion. He once triggered a 22-minute delay in Tokyo by switching mid-sentence to a dying dialect only spoken in a single Guangdong valley. The translator didn't catch it. He got the upper hand. He didn't just use language, he weaponized it. The second file came straight from Quinn Executive Office. RARE Summit Dinner, Participant Restrictions. I didn't even have to open it to know what it said. Attendance conditional upon formal request from a ranking participant. No anticipatory involvement authorized. Maintain support posture unless summoned. My father's language, sharp, clean, final. This was supposed to be symbolic, the first tech alliance gesture in nearly a decade between the US and China. Historic, performative, full of polished optics and no room for failure. And my father wasn't taking any chances, especially not on me. I sat back in my chair, let the files sit open a little longer than needed. The message was clear. He wasn't protecting national security. He was protecting his control, his image, his stage. They were expecting Zhao to perform, to deliver lines, shake hands, sip wine. I knew better. I pulled my old drive from the safe, flipped through recordings from Qinghai, Sichuan, fragments from embedded fieldwork nobody ever asked about. I listened for hours, let my ear recalibrate, tone matching. Syllable breaks, shifted breath rhythms. Each one was like a thread I hadn't touched in years. But muscle memory kicked in. It always did. I pulled out a notepad and started rebuilding dialect trees. Highlighted branches Zhao might pivot into if he wanted to catch the room off guard. No one had asked me to prepare, but I did. Because I knew how this game worked. They'd dress the dinner up in diplomacy and protocol. But if Zhao came in speaking like he had before, there would be a 10-second gap between his words and comprehension. And in 10 seconds, power shifts. I didn't trust the official translator. I'd seen him fumble once. I wouldn't bet national strategy on him. I kept my prep quiet, no chatter, no signals, just late nights with headphones, posture drills, whisper rehearsals in front of a blacked-out screen. I wasn't waiting to be called. I was getting ready for when the room broke open. The estate ballroom was dressed to kill. White linen, sculpted ice, imported floral centerpieces that probably cost more than a junior analyst's yearly bonus. Everything gleamed, every movement rehearsed. The air itself felt filtered. I stood near the rear archway, not officially part of the guest list. Support posture, as instructed. Hair tight, black suit sharp, eyes fixed on the table like I wasn't looking for my cue. But I was. Zhao Ming entered 5 minutes late, flanked by 2 aides. Calm, controlled, not smiling. My father walked out to greet him, shook his hand like they were equals. He knew better. Dinner began with speeches, safe, predictable stuff. Trade rhetoric, joint innovation promises, high-level applause lines for a press release none of us believed in. Then came the moment. Zhao stood for the toast, lifted his glass, cleared his throat, and began speaking in Suining dialect. Not Sichuanese, not even proper Southwest Mandarin. Suining, a deep provincial variant most Chinese natives couldn't parse cleanly. Obscure, rural, unrecorded in any translator app. I saw the US translator's shoulders tighten. He blinked, hesitated, looked at my father. Zhao kept going. Calm, measured, controlled disruption. The translator froze. "I'm sorry. My father stood abruptly. "We'll clarify with..." I was already moving. "Zhao Zong," I said firmly, stepping forward. "Nida yish wodong." "I understand what you're saying." Every head turned. Zhao paused, then smiled. Genuinely this time. "Ni shi za laosh de suetu?" "You're Professor Zhao's student?" I nodded. "Yinian ban gen ta zai Huangnan." "A year and a half with him in Huangnan." He chuckled, then shifted fully into Suining, this time deeper, older phrasing layered with idiomatic tests. He was probing. I matched him, sentence for sentence. I didn't just translate. I mirrored tone, posture, intent, not just the words, the weight. I felt the balance of the room tilt. Executives leaned in. Phones stopped. Glasses stayed on the table. My father's jaw locked. I didn't look at him. Zhao turned toward the US contingent and spoke again, then paused to let me translate. I stepped closer to the center. He says the strength of a bridge is judged not by its materials, but by how it holds when no one trusts it yet. Someone near the end of the table whispered, "Who is she?" I didn't flinch. I kept going. For the next hour, Zhao spoke freely, never once slowing down, never once addressing anyone else for translation. I held the entire room in rhythm. When the US Director of Foreign Cyber Ops tried to pivot the conversation back to English-based agenda points, Zhao answered him, in Suining, to me. And I translated again. Even tone, full fidelity. I didn't embellish, didn't grandstand, just carried the words. Zhao nodded to me after the final point, then sat down, visibly relaxed. The energy shifted, subtle but permanent. I'd stabilized what was about to derail. By the time dessert hit the table, I was still standing. No one told me to move. My father hadn't spoken since his failed interruption. He sat stiffly, expression blank. I could feel the fury radiating under the surface, but he couldn't do a damn thing. Not in front of them, not now. As people began leaving, a senior White House liaison passed by me and whispered, "We'd have lost that moment without you." I gave a slight nod. It was never going to be theirs to control. When the last of the guests cleared, I walked toward the side exit, still invisible on paper, but not in that room, not anymore. 3 days later, the official dinner summary hit internal channels. 42 pages, executive-level access only, circulated to state, defense, and senior ops. I skimmed straight to the comms log. Zhao Ming's opening remarks, acknowledged. Unscheduled dialect shift, neutralized through adaptive translation support. Stabilization of table, handled via internal protocol. No names, I checked the credits. Lead translation, Office of Strategic Communications Liaison. I wasn't even listed as support. I hit view chain. It pulled up the clearance tree, 6 approval signatures. The last one, KQ, I didn't even blink. I printed the summary, highlighted the redacted sections, stapled the metadata trace behind it, labeled the top page, Suppressed Attribution, Strategic Intervention Protocol. August 19th, then I slid it into the folder. Same drawer, same cabinet. The file was thicker now. Proof stacked on proof. But I didn't just file it away this time. I picked up my phone. I didn't call friends. I didn't scream. I sent one encrypted message to internal legal counsel, requesting preliminary protection protocol review, whistleblower statute class C, targeting systematic suppression of internal contributions and false attribution across Security Linguistics Division. I attached the documents, all of them. Audio logs, scrubbed versions, the dinner report, my original work, everything. I hit send. Nothing flashy, no grand gesture, just truth, delivered with precision. My father wanted a narrative. Something clean, something polished, something that always ended with Chris as the symbol and me as the shadow. But this wasn't a story anymore. This was evidence. An hour later, legal replied, "Received. Review under secure chain initiated. You will be contacted only through Redline protocol moving forward." Fine. I went to my office, closed the door, opened a fresh folder, labeled it Fallout Phase 1. I knew what came next. There'd be silence at first, a vacuum. Whispers, then controlled questions. He wouldn't panic. He'd try to contain it. Maybe shift blame. Maybe tell himself I was just acting emotional. But this wasn't emotional. This was structured, calculated, deliberate. I hadn't flinched when they erased me this time because I saw it coming. He didn't realize I was done waiting for recognition. Now I was building a case. And this time, I didn't care who it shattered. The first woman came forward 6 days in. Her message was brief, routed through secure channels, no name attached, just a note. Your reports match what happened to me. They said I lacked executive clarity, that my instincts were too collaborative. I rewrote 3 regional risk assessments in 2019. All of them were published under someone else's name. You stood up first, so now I'm not standing alone. The next day, there were 2 more messages. Then 5, then 14, all of them women, all mid-tier or senior-level staff. Most had spent years being quietly repositioned, denied promotions, removed from lead roles, scrubbed from final publications. Every single one had paper trails that looped back to the same clearance stamp, KQ. The investigation wasn't loud. Legal kept it tight. Quiet interviews, chain of command tracebacks. Nothing leaked to press, but inside the building, things shifted. You could feel it. Doors didn't close as fast when I walked past. People didn't pretend I wasn't in the room. And in every meeting where his name used to carry silence, now it carried tension. I didn't gloat. I didn't start calling people out. I just kept showing up, doing the work, letting the truth do what it does best, accumulate. One morning, a printout appeared on my desk. No sender, just a time-stamped transcription of an audio recording. The line that mattered was near the end. She's good, but I can't let her stand above me. It's not her story to lead, VoicePrint confirmed. Kenneth Quinn. They'd caught it during an internal strategy session. Someone had recorded the prep briefing, probably to double-check talking points. That line wasn't supposed to be on the record. Didn't matter. Now it was. It circulated like wildfire, anonymously at first. No one claimed responsibility. No one needed to. The sentence spoke for itself. Control, not merit. Legacy, not capability. He'd said the quiet part out loud. After that, the walls didn't just crack, they caved. I got pulled into a quiet briefing by compliance. No threats, no theatrics. Just 3 people in suits reviewing the findings. "Your documentation has been critical," one of them said. "You handled this with remarkable restraint." It wasn't restraint. It was focus. I wasn't after revenge. I wanted the truth to land so hard they couldn't walk around it. A week later, the internal bulletin went out. Kenneth Quinn resigned. Effective immediately. No statement, no event, just silence. The same man who built an empire out of intelligence and fear walked out of his own company without a word. I didn't go to the office that day. I didn't want to see the cleanup, the whispers, the people pretending they hadn't watched him burn every bridge just to keep the spotlight on a son who never got to finish the job. I sat in my apartment instead, the sun cutting sharp through the blinds. Folder open beside me, phone on mute. One more message came through late that night. "I used to think I was imagining it, that maybe I wasn't cut out for this, but you proved it wasn't just in my head. Thank you." That one stayed with me. I didn't write back, didn't need to. This wasn't about credit. It was about air, space, room to exist without being erased. And now finally, there was some. 2.5 weeks after he resigned, I found a plain white envelope in my mailbox. No return address, no stamp. Hand-delivered. The handwriting on the front was his. I knew it instantly. Inside, 1 sheet, cream stock, ink black and deliberate, a full page, no greeting, no sign-off. Just this. "I thought protecting you meant controlling the spotlight. That keeping you small was how I could keep you safe." I read it once, didn't move, You were never the shadow. You were the part I couldn't shape, and that scared me more than I ever admitted. He didn't ask for forgiveness, didn't beg. Chris was easy to honor because he was gone. But you were in front of me, reminding me every day what I couldn't command. I didn't know what I expected from him, but it wasn't this. Not written out, not in his own hand. I confused legacy with love, control with care, and I buried your work because it didn't fit the story I needed to tell the world. I read the letter again. Slower this time, not to forgive, not to heal, just to feel the weight of what he finally admitted. He'd never said it when it could have mattered. Not at the agency, not after Kabul, not after the dinner, not even when the investigation closed with him boxed into a corner. But this was something, not repair, not redemption, just a break in the armor. I folded the letter neatly, slid it into a new file labeled Private. Quinn Legacy, Final Chapter. Then I placed it in the same drawer where all the other proof lived. Not to forget, to remember, not just what he did, but that he knew. A month later, I stepped into my new office. No fanfare, no ceremony. Just a nameplate, Charlotte Quinn, Director, Strategic Language Integration. The space wasn't flashy, glass walls, concrete floors, whiteboards everywhere, but it was mine, built from the ground up. The first thing I unpacked was a folded dialect map. I pinned it on the main wall, right where everyone walking in would see it. At the center, a red pushpin. Tiny village, Western, Huangnan. The one where the dialect that shifted the summit first found a place in my mouth. By the end of the week, I launched the pilot program. 10 people, all sharp, some field linguists, some ops side analysts, a few tech-leaning translators who wanted to stretch past software. They weren't here to learn phrases. They were here to learn how language moves. I stood at the front of the first session. No notes, just the map behind me and a dry erase marker in hand. I started with one line. They once told me to stay quiet in the corner. They watched me, unsure where it was going. I nodded. I learned to see the whole room from there. That got them. I taught them how to hear tone distortion over clear phrasing, how silence in one dialect isn't avoidance, it's power, how laughter can be a form of resistance, how mistranslation doesn't always come from ignorance, it can come from design. This wasn't textbook, this was field combat, and I made damn sure they understood that. One student stayed behind after class. Young. Quick. She said, "They said you weren't the loudest voice, that you just outlasted everyone." I shrugged. "I just never stopped speaking the truth." She smiled. "That's louder than yelling." I didn't answer. I didn't have to. I don't wait for permission anymore. Don't wait to be asked to the table. I build the table. And now they come to me, not because I forced my way in, but because I never backed out.